The great chamber floated in space, a massive structure that had witnessed 1,000 years of galactic decisions. Inside, representatives from 47 species sat in their designated sections, each area designed for their specific environmental needs. The Valorians breathed methane in their sealed pods. The Silicon Collective rested on heated platforms. The water-dwelling Nautics observed from their suspended tanks. Ambassador Taesung stood in the center speaking platform, his human form small compared to many of the beings watching him. His voice carried through the translation systems to every corner of the chamber. 3 days ago, the Krath Empire destroyed our diplomatic vessel near the outer reaches. 247 souls were aboard. Scientists, teachers, families returning home. They sent no warning. They ignored all communication protocols. They simply fired. Taesung's hands gripped the podium. We invoke Article 7 of the Mutual Defense Treaty. We ask the Council to stand with us, as we have stood with you for 70 years. Chancellor Mothkar, the ancient Valorian who had led the Council for 3 centuries, shifted in his containment pod. His translated voice boomed across the chamber. The Council understands your grief, Ambassador. But the Krath Empire commands 600 warships. Their territory spans 12 systems. They have conquered 7 species in the past century alone. We know what they are, Taesung replied. That's why the treaty exists. So no one faces them alone. Ian Wu sat in the human delegation section, watching the proceedings with growing dread. He was Earth's military attaché, a veteran of the border conflicts. He had fought alongside Council forces against pirates and raiders. He had bled with Valorian soldiers, shared rations with Nautics warriors. He had believed in this alliance. Now he watched as one by one, Council members made their positions clear. The Nautics representative spoke first. Our fleets are committed to defending our spawning worlds. We cannot spare ships. The Silicon Collective was next. The Krath use plasma weapons. Our people are vulnerable. We must abstain. Species after species offered excuses. Some were practical. Some were cowardly. All reached the same conclusion. G-1 watched from the observation gallery, her throat tight. She was a xenobiologist, stationed on the Council homeworld for the past 5 years. She had friends among dozens of species. She had believed she was building something meaningful, bridges between humanity and the wider galaxy. The Valorian researcher Tolma, who worked in the lab next to hers, had once called her sister. Tolma was in the chamber now, part of the Valorian delegation. She wouldn't meet G1's eyes. The vote came swiftly. 41 species voted for neutrality. 3 abstained. Only 2 voted to honor the Mutual Defense Treaty, the Kelmer. A small species humanity had once helped resettle after a solar flare destroyed their homeworld, and the Rift Dwellers, who owed humanity a blood debt from the plague years. 2 species out of 47. Chancellor Mothkar delivered the final statement. The Council recognizes this is a difficult decision, but we must consider the greater good. The Krath conflict is a regional matter. Humanity is a young species, but capable. We trust you will find a diplomatic solution. The Council offers its hopes for peaceful resolution. Hopes, not ships, not soldiers, not the support they had promised in treaties signed and witnessed. Taesung stood silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, but it carried. 70 years ago, when the Valorians faced the Red Plague, human doctors volunteered. 43 of them died finding the cure. When the Nautics spawning grounds were threatened by the asteroid cluster, human engineers spent 2 years moving every single rock. When the Silicon Collective needed new mining techniques that wouldn't damage their crystalline structures, human geologists developed them freely, asking nothing in return. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of as many representatives as possible. We have honored every treaty. We have answered every call. We have given our knowledge, our resources, our lives. We asked for one thing in return, that when our turn came, you would remember. The chamber was absolutely silent. You have made your position clear, Kasung continued. Humanity will make ours equally clear. We are withdrawing from all council activities, effective immediately. All human personnel will return to Earth space within 30 days. All trade agreements are suspended. All research collaborations are ended. All military support is cancelled. Mothkar's pod rippled. Ambassador, let us not be hasty. Perhaps we can discuss. There is nothing to discuss, Chancellor. You have shown us what we are to you. We are acceptable when we serve. We are expendable when we need. This is noted. This is understood. This is final. Hyan Wu felt something cold settle in his chest. He had spent 15 years believing in this alliance. Now he saw it clearly. They had never been partners. They had been useful. Taesung stepped down from the platform. As he walked toward the exit, he paused. Humanity will remember who stood with us today. The Kelmer. The Drift Dwellers. We will not forget our true friends. He looked back at the council. And we will not forget this moment. Goodbye, Chancellor. The human delegation filed out in silence. G1 left the observation gallery, her hands shaking. In the corridors, she passed Tolma. The Valorian researcher reached out. G1, please understand. It was political. It doesn't change our friendship. G1 looked at her former friend. It changes everything, she said softly, and walked away. Within 6 hours, every human ship in council space received the same encoded message. Return home. Within 3 days, human embassies across council territory began closing. Personnel packed decades of work into cargo containers. Cultural centers went dark. Research facilities transmitted their final data and shut down. The council expected anger. They expected protests. They expected humanity to plead, to bargain, to rage against the decision. Instead, they got silence. Human communication networks went dark. Trade frequencies stopped broadcasting. The constant stream of human art, music, scientific papers, and cultural exchange that had flowed into council space for 70 years simply stopped. It was like a star going out. And in that sudden darkness, the council was about to discover exactly what they had lost. 6 months passed like water through open fingers. At first, the council barely noticed the human absence. They were a young species, after all. Only 2 centuries in space. Their territory was small, their influence limited. The galaxy would continue as it always had. The first cracks appeared in the infrastructure. J-Min had been an engineer assigned to the Valorian Gate Network. The massive quantum tunnels that allowed instant travel between star systems. For 8 years, he had maintained the delicate stabilizers that kept the gates operational. He had trained Valorian technicians, written maintenance manuals, designed fail-safe systems. The Valorians had nodded and smiled and taken his work. But they had never truly learned it. They had assumed he would always be there. 3 months after his departure, Gate 7 began experiencing fluctuations. The Valorian engineers consulted Jamin's manuals, tried to follow his procedures. The fluctuations worsened. They sent messages to Earth, requesting assistance. The messages went unanswered. Gate 7 collapsed entirely in the 4th month, cutting off trade between the Valorian core worlds and the mineral-rich outer colonies. 70 cargo ships were trapped in quantum space. 34 were never recovered. The Valorians tried to fix the other gates using the same procedures that had failed on Gate 7. Gates 12 and 3 began, showing the same warning signs. We need the human, Senior Engineer Rolthas admitted in an emergency meeting. I don't understand the quantum mathematics. None of us do. Jaemin tried to teach us, but we thought we had time. They sent official requests through every channel they could find. They offered payment, honors, apologies. The silence from Earth was absolute. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Sunhee had been a medical researcher working on Chroma syndrome, a degenerative neural disease affecting a dozen council species. She had been close to a breakthrough, combining human neurological understanding with alien biochemistry in ways no one had attempted before. Her research team included nautics doctors, Silicon Collective analysts, and Valorian geneticists. When she left, she took all her primary research with her. What remained were partial data sets, incomplete theories, and notes that raised more questions than answers. The multi-species team tried to continue without her. Within 2 months, they admitted defeat. Chroma syndrome killed 40,000 beings that year. It would have been prevented by a cure that was perhaps 6 months away. But those 6 months required Sunhee's unique perspective, her ability to see patterns across different biological systems. She was on Earth now. In silence, and the dying continued. The economic impact spread like a slow poison. Human trade ships had been everywhere, carrying goods between species that wouldn't deal with each other directly. The humans were neutral, trusted, efficient. When they withdrew, trade routes collapsed. The Silicon clans and the methane breathers had needed human intermediaries for transactions. Without them, old prejudices resurfaced. Prices rose. Shortages appeared. Species that had depended on human-facilitated trade found themselves isolated. But perhaps the strangest loss was cultural. Baora had commanded a human peacekeeping fleet in the demilitarized zone between the Silicon and methane clans. The two species had been feuding for 3 centuries over a disputed asteroid field. Tensions had been high, but stable. The human presence had kept both sides cautious. When Baora withdrew her ships, both sides saw opportunity. The Silicon struck first, believing the methane breathers were planning an attack. The methane breathers retaliated, certain they were defending themselves. Within 3 weeks, the skirmishes became battles. Within 2 months, it was war. The council sent peacekeepers, but neither side trusted them. They had trusted the humans because humans had no stake in the conflict, no interest in the asteroids, no ancient grudges. The council peacekeepers had political considerations. The war continued. In entertainment districts across council space, venues that had featured human music went quiet. Human holodramas, which had become surprisingly popular, stopped arriving. Human cuisine, which had been spreading through council worlds, disappeared as ingredients became unavailable and human chefs returned home. A Valorian youth, who had spent years learning human guitar-style music, found himself playing to smaller and smaller crowds. "It feels empty now," he told a journalist. "Like a color has gone from the spectrum." But the most critical loss was invisible until it was too late. Commander Inzu had run Earth's intelligence liaison with the Council. For decades, human ships had traveled everywhere. Human traders talked to everyone. Human researchers worked in every field. Earth had shared all this intelligence freely with the Council, asking nothing in return except access to Council databases. The Council had never realized how much of their intelligence picture came from human sources. 40% of actionable data on craft movements had originated from human networks. Information on pirate activities, smuggling routes, political instabilities across dozens of systems had all flowed through human channels. When Earth went silent, that river of information dried up instantly. The craft had been quiet for months, seemingly unconcerned with the Council's decision. Then they began to move. A mining colony on the border vanished. A Council patrol fleet disappeared. The Kroner species, a council member, reported Krath ships in their territory. The council's intelligence services scrambled to understand what was happening. Their networks had holes in them, gaps they had never noticed because human intelligence had always filled them. "We need their data," Intelligence Director Varkesh admitted. "We're operating blind in 7 sectors." They sent requests to Earth. They sent official communications, unofficial back channels, personal appeals. They contacted human citizens who had married into other species, asking them to serve as intermediaries. Yunseo had married a Valorian scientist. She had lived on the Valorian homeworld for 12 years. She had friends, a life, a home. When Council Intelligence contacted her, she listened to their request quietly. "You want me to betray my species," she said finally. "We're asking you to help save lives," the Valorian agent replied. "The Krath are moving. Without human intelligence, we can't track them. People will die." Yunseo looked at the agent for a long moment. When Earth needed help, people died. The Council watched it happen. "You made a choice. We made ours. Don't ask me to undo what you created." She ended the communication and never responded to another. Chancellor Mothkar sat in his private chamber, reviewing reports. Gate failures, medical crises, intelligence blackouts, trade disruptions, cultural stagnation, military instabilities. The list went on and on. Senior Counselor Vexter entered. He had been the loudest voice arguing against helping humanity. "The economic analysis is complete," he said quietly. "Council GDP has contracted by 18%. Medical progress across 42 research fields has stalled. Our intelligence capabilities have degraded significantly." "And the Krath?" Mothkar asked. "They've taken 4 systems. 2 council members have fallen. We don't know where they'll strike next." Mothkar was silent. Then he said something he had never admitted before. "We were wrong about them. The humans? We thought they needed us. We thought they were a minor species clinging to our protection, contributing little." Mothkar's voice was heavy. "We never realized how much we needed them. How much they gave. Not because they had to. Because they wanted to build something better. Should we try to contact them again? They won't answer." "Why would they?" Mothkar looked at the reports. "We showed them exactly what we are. We're practical. We're cautious. We calculate odds and make safe choices. They showed us what they were. They helped anyway." In the silence that followed, both of them understood. The Council had not just lost a member species. They had lost something more fundamental. They had lost the one species that had believed in them, and now they were learning the cost of that loss, one crisis at a time. 2 years had passed since the Council's decision. The galaxy had learned to navigate the absence of humanity, though it was like learning to walk with a missing limb. Awkward, painful, never quite natural. The Krath Empire had not learned anything. They had learned only that they could take what they wanted. 4 council species had fallen to Krath invasion. The Bromo, whose floating cities had been cultural treasures, were now slaves in Krath mining operations. The Yeneth, gentle philosophers who had contributed greatly to council arts, had been scattered across the empire as servants. The Kroner and the Velshek had simply vanished, their worlds stripped of resources, their people relocated to labor camps. The council fleet had tried to stop them. They had failed. Without human intelligence networks, they arrived too late or in the wrong locations. Without human engineering support, their ships suffered equipment failures at critical moments. Without the confidence that came from knowing someone would stand with them, many council members held their fleets back, protecting their own worlds instead of defending their neighbors. The Krath advanced system by system, methodical and unstoppable. Chancellor Mothkar made the decision that should have been obvious much earlier. He would go to Earth himself. Not send a message, not dispatch an ambassador, but make a personal pilgrimage to the human homeworld. Perhaps, face to face, they could repair what had been broken. The Council prepared diplomatic packages, trade incentives, technology exchanges, formal apologies. Everything they could think of to convince humanity to return. Mothkar's ship approached Earth's solar system and was immediately intercepted by a human patrol vessel. The human captain was polite but firm. "State your business, Chancellor. I wish to speak with your government to discuss renewed cooperation. I will relay your request." 3 days Mothkar waited in orbit, his ship surrounded by human defense platforms that had not existed 2 years ago. The humans had been busy in their silence. Finally, permission came. He could land. One location only. No entourage. No ceremony. The landing site was not the capital. Not the diplomatic centers. It was a memorial park in what had once been Seoul. Tae-soon met him there. The ambassador looked older than Mothkar remembered. Tired. "Chancellor," he said simply. "Ambassador. Thank you for seeing me." "Director now," Tae-soon corrected. "I direct Earth's external affairs." Though there isn't much external to direct these days. They walked through the park in silence. Mothkar saw the memorial walls. Thousands of names carved into black stone. "The Krath attack?" he asked. "The one you declined to help us with?" "Yes." Mothkar felt the weight of those names. "I came to apologize, and to ask if humanity would consider returning to the Council." "Why?" "Because the Krath are destroying us. Because we need you." Tae-soon stopped walking. "You needed us 2 years ago. You decided we were expendable. What changed?" "We were wrong. We underestimated what you contributed. We underestimated what we would lose." "You underestimated us entirely," Tae-soon said. "But that's not why you're here. You're here because you're losing, and you think we can save you." Before Mothkar could respond, another figure joined them. Dr. Sung-ho, Earth's chief science advisor. A woman who had once worked closely with Council researchers. "Chancellor," she greeted him coldly. "Doctor, I hope you are well." "I'm alive." Unlike the 4 species the Krath have conquered while the Council watched. She turned to Tae-soon. "Is he asking what I think he's asking?" "He wants us to come back." Sung-ho laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Of course he does." Mothkar felt frustration rising. "You don't understand the situation. The Krath have 600 warships. They have superior weapons. We know exactly what they have," Tae-soon interrupted. "We've been tracking them since the day we left Council space. Then you know how desperate the situation is." "We do. We also know it's not our problem anymore. People are dying." "People died when they attacked us," Tae-soon said quietly. "You watched it happen. You calculated the odds. You decided it was acceptable." Mothkar had no answer for that. They walked further into the park. There were more memorials here. Different names. Different dates. "What are these?" Mothkar asked. "The Krath invaded Earth space 6 months after we left the Council," Sung-ho said. "They thought we were isolated, vulnerable, easy prey. They sent a fleet of 80 warships. These memorials honor the humans who died in that invasion." Mothkar stopped. "You fought the Krath?" "We had no intelligence about this, because we didn't share it. We don't share anything anymore, remember? But 80 warships. How did you?" Mothkar trailed off, looking at the memorials. The casualty numbers were there. 15,000 dead. Terrible, but not the millions he would have expected from such an attack. How did we survive? Tae-soon finished. How did we win? Yes, the 2 humans exchanged a look. Finally, Sung-ho spoke. "Do you know why the Council is losing to the Krath, Chancellor? They have superior military technology. No, you're losing because you think like the Council. You calculate acceptable losses. You make safe choices. You protect what you have instead of risking it to win. And humans think differently? We think like humans, Taesung said. When the Krath came for us, we didn't calculate odds. We didn't debate treaties. We didn't worry about what was acceptable. We did what was necessary. Something in his tone made Mothkar's internal organs shift uncomfortably. What did you do? We won, Sunho said simply. Completely. Totally. We didn't just defeat their fleet. We made sure they understood that attacking humanity was the worst mistake they could make. I don't understand. The Krath are expanding because species fear them more than they hate them. Taesung explained. They calculated that Council species would surrender rather than fight. They were right. But humans don't surrender, Chancellor. We can't. It's not in our psychology. But 80 warships. Technology doesn't win wars, Sunho interrupted. Determination wins wars. Understanding your enemy wins wars. Being willing to do what they won't expect wins wars. Mothkar looked at them both. There was something different in their eyes. Something hard. What are you telling me? Everything, Taesung said. Because you're not our ally anymore. You made that clear. Even if it means the Council falls. Even if species are enslaved and destroyed. You were willing to let that happen to us. That was a mistake. Yes, it was, Taesung agreed. Your mistake. Your consequences. Mothkar felt desperation clawing at him. Please, I'm asking for help. Not for myself. For billions of beings across Council space who had nothing to do with our decision. Taesung was quiet for a long moment. You want to know why we won't help you, Chancellor? It's not revenge. It's not punishment. It's protection. Protection? When the Krath came, and we knew we stood alone, something changed in humanity. We stopped being the species that wanted to build bridges. We became the species that would do anything to survive. And we're very, very good at that. Sunho stepped forward. We developed weapons we'd never imagined. Tactics we'd considered unethical. Strategies that would horrify the species we used to be. And it worked. It worked so well that it terrified us. Where are the Krath ships now? Mothkar asked suddenly. The ones that attacked you? Gone, Taesung said. Destroyed? No, gone. Along with everyone who ordered the attack. Along with the leadership that thought humanity was weak. We didn't just defend ourselves, Chancellor. We sent a message. Mothkar felt something cold settle in his core. What kind of message? The kind that made sure they never came back. The kind that made them understand what humans become when you push us into a corner with no allies and no hope. You're frightening me, Mothkar admitted. Good, Sunho said. You should be frightened. Because we've frightened ourselves. That's why we're staying silent. Not because we can't help you. Because we're afraid of what we'll become if we start fighting again. I don't understand. We know, Taesung said gently. That's the problem. You never understood us at all. The rumors started 3 months after Chancellor Mothkar's failed visit to Earth. Whispers traveling through neutral traders, independent merchants, and species that maintained contact with both the Council and the wider galaxy. The Krath Empire was quiet. Too quiet. For 18 months, they had been an unstoppable force, conquering world after world. Then suddenly, nothing. No new invasions. No fleet movements. The border between Krath space and Council territory had become absolutely silent. Merchant Captain Rilvan was a Torkin, a species that maintained strict neutrality in all conflicts. The Torkin traded with everyone, asked no questions, and survived by being useful to all sides. Rilvan had made a fortune running supplies to Krath worlds, selling luxuries to their officer class. When he emerged from Krath space after his latest trading run, he went directly to a council intelligence post. "You need to hear this," he told a startled officer. In a secure briefing room, he told his story. "I had authorization to deliver to Krath Fortress World 7, Military Command Center, training facilities, weapon foundries. I'd been there a dozen times. This time was different." "Different how?" the intelligence officer asked. "It was quiet. No military drills. No weapons testing. The officer who met my ship was polite. Polite. A Krath officer smiled at me and asked if I had a pleasant journey." The officer leaned forward. "That is unusual. It gets stranger. I saw Krath civilians in the streets. Before, they were always hurrying, always afraid. Now they were walking slowly, talking to each other, even laughing. There were schools open, libraries, art centers. Perhaps they've changed their culture? In 6 months? No, something happened to them." More reports filtered in from other neutral traders. Krath worlds were peaceful. The warrior culture that had defined them for centuries seemed to have vanished. Slave populations had been freed. Weapons factories had been converted to manufacturing civilian goods. The Council's intelligence services were baffled. Species didn't change overnight. Cultures didn't transform completely in a few months. What could possibly have caused this? Senior Counselor Vexter proposed sending a covert reconnaissance mission. "We need to know what happened. If the Krath threat is truly gone, that changes everything." The mission launched within a week. A small scout ship with advanced sensors and a crew trained in deep reconnaissance. Their orders were simple: enter Krath space, observe, and return with answers. The ship crossed the border and vanished from Council sensors. 3 weeks of silence followed. When they finally emerged, the crew requested immediate transport to the Council homeworld. Their report could only be delivered in person. The Council chamber was packed for the briefing. Every major species had representatives present. The scout ship captain, a veteran nautics explorer, stood before them visibly shaken. "We surveyed 17 Krath worlds," she began. "What we found defies all our understanding of cultural evolution and military conquest." The holographic display activated, showing images of Krath cities, clean streets, organized infrastructure, citizens going about peaceful daily activities. The Krath are still there. Their cities are intact. Their population is healthy. But they've changed fundamentally. The warrior culture is gone. They have educational systems now, focusing on arts, sciences, philosophy. They've established diplomatic relations with their former slave species. They're rebuilding everything they destroyed. How is this possible? Someone asked. We found evidence of human presence on every world we surveyed. The chamber erupted in noise. The captain waited for silence. Schools teaching human educational methods. Medical facilities using human techniques. Cultural centers with human art and literature. But no humans. They came, they changed everything, and they left. Changed how? Chancellor Mothkar asked quietly. We don't know. There's no sign of military occupation. No evidence of mass casualties. The Krath simply reformed. Their entire civilization restructured in months. The recording continued, showing more images. Libraries filled with translated human texts. Training facilities teaching conflict resolution instead of combat. Former military commanders now running civilian governments. We managed to interview several Krath citizens, the captain continued. They were cautious but willing to talk. They spoke about re-education programs, about understanding different perspectives, about learning why their warrior culture was unsustainable. Re-education? Vexter said slowly. The humans brainwashed them? I don't know if that's the right word. The Krath we spoke to seemed genuinely changed. Not forced, not controlled. Changed. They understood why their old ways were wrong. They wanted to be different. Another council member stood. This is impossible. You can't change an entire species' culture through education. Not this completely. Not this fast. Nevertheless, that's what we observed, the captain said. The council watched in silence as the presentation continued. More images. More data. The scope of what humanity had accomplished became clear. Hundreds of worlds. Millions of Krath. An entire empire transformed. We need to understand their methods, Mothkar said. If humans can accomplish this, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Everyone in the chamber understood. If humans could completely restructure an enemy civilization without destroying it, what else could they do? The reconnaissance mission had one final revelation. At the border of what had been Krath space, they had encountered a human patrol ship. They were waiting for us, the captain said. Like they knew we would come. The recording showed a human vessel, sleek and advanced. A face appeared on screen. Male, young, with a calm expression. I am Intelligence Officer Kyung-Soo of Earth Defense. This space is under humanitarian quarantine. For your safety and the safety of the recovering populations here, please turn back. We have authorization from the Council to conduct reconnaissance, the Nautics captain had replied. The Council has no authority here. These worlds are recovering from systematic violence and cultural trauma. Outside interference could damage the rehabilitation process. I'm asking you to respect that. We just want to understand what happened. Kyung-Soo had looked directly at the camera. What happened is that humanity did what was necessary to stop the Krath threat. We did it alone because we had no choice. The methods we used are not for public review. Turn back, Captain, please. The scout ship captain had decided to ignore the warning. We proceeded deeper into the territory. Within 3 hours, our systems began experiencing malfunctions. Navigation errors. Sensor glitches. Nothing critical, but enough to make us uncomfortable. We realized the humans were actively blocking our reconnaissance. They attacked you? Someone asked. No, they just made it clear we weren't welcome. We could have pushed further, but the message was obvious. This was their operation, their responsibility. They didn't want witnesses. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Min-G, a human researcher who had once worked with council scientists, had sent one final message to her former colleagues. It was played for the council now. Her face appeared on screen, her expression serious. I understand you're trying to understand what we did to the Krath. I can't give you details. What I can tell you is this. You were afraid the Krath would destroy you. We were afraid we'd have to become something terrible to stop them. She paused, choosing her words carefully. The Krath are warriors. They respect strength. They understand domination. So we showed them strength they couldn't imagine. We dominated them so completely that resistance became unthinkable. Then, when they were ready to listen, we taught them a different way. The techniques we used were psychological, cultural, educational. We didn't destroy the Krath. We helped them destroy their own worst aspects. We gave them tools to rebuild themselves into something better. Her expression softened slightly. You chose self-preservation. You chose to protect yourselves by avoiding the fight. We chose to do what you wouldn't, alone, and we succeeded. The recording ended. Chancellor Mothkar sat in silence, processing what he'd learned. Humanity hadn't just defeated the Krath militarily. They had defeated them psychologically, culturally, philosophically. They had done something the Council had thought impossible, and they had done it in silence. Telling no one, asking for nothing. What have we lost? He asked quietly. Vexter understood the question. A species that could reshape civilizations. That could solve problems we thought unsolvable. That could change the galaxy. And we pushed them away. We chose safety over alliance. They chose to become whatever was necessary to survive. And now they're quarantining themselves because they're afraid of what they became. In the silence that followed, the Council finally understood the true cost of their decision. 5 years after the Council's betrayal, Chancellor Mothkar was dying. The Valorians were long-lived, but even they eventually failed. His body was shutting down system by system. The medical staff said he had perhaps 3 months remaining. He spent those months reviewing his decisions, examining the consequences of choices made decades ago. One decision haunted him above all others. The day he had told humanity they stood alone. Against his advisor's recommendations, against all protocol, Mothkar made one final journey. To Earth, not as Chancellor, but as a dying being seeking understanding before the end. His ship approached Earth's solar system. The human patrol vessels intercepted immediately, but this time, permission to land came quickly. Perhaps they knew he was dying. Perhaps they simply pitied him. Taesung met him at the same memorial park where they had spoken years before. The human looked different now. Older, yes, but also calmer. More settled. Director, Mothkar greeted him. Chancellor, I heard about your illness. I'm sorry. Don't be. I've lived long enough. Perhaps too long. Mothkar looked around the park. More memorials had been added. You've been busy. The galaxy doesn't stop just because we're silent. They walked slowly. Mothkar's strength was limited now. I came to ask a question. I've spent 5 years trying to understand. Why did you withdraw? You proved you didn't need us. You proved you could accomplish what we feared to attempt. Why not return and show us our mistake? Taesung was quiet for a long time. Finally, he gestured to a bench. They sat together, an ancient Valorian and a middle-aged human, looking at memorials to the dead. You were right to fear us, Taesung said finally. What? When the Council abandoned us, something broke in humanity. Not our technology. Not our military capability. Our idealism. Dr. Sung-ho joined them, as if she had been waiting nearby. We used to believe the galaxy was full of species trying to build something better together. We believed in cooperation, in mutual support, in standing together against darkness. You shattered that belief, Taesung continued. In a single vote, you showed us we were alone. Truly, deeply alone. No one would stand with us when it mattered. Mothkar felt the words like physical blows. So you hate us? No, Sung-ho said. That would be easier. We don't hate you. We understand you. You made a rational choice based on self-interest. Most species would have done the same. Then why the silence? Because of what we became when we realized we were alone, Taesung said. When the Kreth came for us, we had no allies. No backup, no hope of rescue. Just ourselves and the certainty that if we failed, humanity would end. So you fought, Mothkar said. We did more than fight. We became something we never wanted to be. Taesung's voice was heavy with something like regret. We studied the Krath, their psychology, their culture, their fears. We found every weakness, every vulnerability, every pressure point. Sung-ho continued. The war wasn't won with weapons, Chancellor. It was won with understanding. We learned how the Krath thought, and then we attacked their thoughts themselves. Psychological warfare, Mothkar said slowly. Beyond anything you're imagining. We developed techniques for cultural subversion, mimetic engineering, social reprogramming. We didn't just defeat the Krath military. We defeated their civilization. We reached into their culture and rewrote it from the inside. Tae-soon looked at the sky. We became very good at it. Terrifyingly good. We could take a warrior culture that had existed for millennia and transform it in months. We could identify the core beliefs that held their society together and replace them with new ones. We could make them want to change. The Krath don't know they were conquered, Sung-ho said quietly. They think they evolved. They believe they chose peace, chose education, chose a better way. And in a sense, they did. We just ensured those were the only choices that seemed reasonable to them. Mothkar felt his organs shift in discomfort. That's terrifying. Yes, Tae-soon agreed. It is. And we're terrified of ourselves because of it. But you won. You saved yourselves. At what cost? Sung-ho asked. We proved we could reshape civilizations. We proved we could turn enemies into allies through techniques that border on mind control. We proved that when humanity has no choice, we become efficient, ruthless, unstoppable. And that frightened you more than the Krath ever did, Mothkar said. Understanding dawning. Exactly. Tae-soon stood, walking toward another memorial. After the Krath, we had a choice. We could return to the council, share our victory, perhaps be welcomed back. But we looked at what we had become and asked ourselves a question. What happens if we keep doing this? What would happen? Mothkar asked. We'd win. Every time. Against any threat. We'd become the galaxy's problem solvers. The species everyone called when situations became desperate. Sung-ho joined Tae-soon. And every time we won, we'd become a little better at it. A little more efficient. A little more willing to do whatever was necessary. Eventually, we'd become exactly what we fought against, Tae-soon said. Not warriors like the Krath, something worse. A species that could make any other species think and act however we wanted. Benevolent tyrants, perhaps, but tyrants nonetheless. Mothkar absorbed this slowly. So you withdrew not to punish us, but to protect us. To protect everyone. To protect ourselves most of all, Sung-ho corrected. We discovered we have a talent for winning. For doing whatever it takes. For becoming whatever we need to be. That's a dangerous talent, Chancellor. Especially for a species that used to believe in cooperation and mutual respect. The silence is quarantine. Mothkar said quietly. Yes, we're staying separate until we figure out how to be the species we want to be instead of the species we became when we were alone and desperate. A younger human approached. Someone Mothkar didn't recognize. She bowed slightly. Director Tae-soon, Ambassador Yunhee sent a message. The Council is requesting humanitarian assistance for the Valorian gate system failures. Tae-soon looked at Mothkar. Third time this month, they've asked. Will you help? Mothkar asked. Probably. The gates failing hurts innocent civilians. We won't punish them for your decisions. Tae-soon paused. But we'll send technical data remotely. No human personnel. No direct contact. We help, but we maintain the distance. How long will you stay silent? Until we're sure we won't become the thing the galaxy should fear. Until we can trust ourselves again. Mothkar felt his strength fading. The conversation had exhausted him. I need to tell you something before I die. Rest first. No, I need to say this. Mothkar looked at both humans. You taught us a lesson we didn't want to learn. We thought we were practical. We thought we made smart, safe choices. We thought strength was having the biggest military and the most resources. He paused, breathing heavily. You showed us that real strength is being willing to stand with others, even when it's dangerous. Real wisdom is understanding that some things matter more than self-preservation. We failed that test. We failed you. And in doing so, we failed ourselves. You made the choice you thought was right, Tae-soon said gently. We made the choice that was safe. There's a difference. Mothcar looked at the memorials around them. These people died because we were afraid. The Krath changed because you were alone. The galaxy became smaller because we couldn't be brave. What will you do with this understanding? Sung-ho asked. Die, mostly, Mothcar said with something like humor. But before I do, I'll tell the council what I learned. That humanity's silence isn't hatred or revenge. It's self-preservation of a different kind. You're protecting us from yourselves. Will they understand? Tae-seung asked. Probably not. Not completely. But perhaps the next generation will. Perhaps they'll be wise enough to earn back what we lost. They sat together in silence for a while. Finally, Mothcar spoke again. Do you think humanity will ever return? Tae-seung looked at Sung-ho. They seemed to communicate without words. Finally, he answered. We want to believe the galaxy can be what we thought it was. A community of species working together, supporting each other, building something better than any of us could build alone. But, Mothcar prompted, but we know now that belief was naive. The galaxy is what it is. Species act in self-interest. Alliances are temporary. Trust is conditional. So you'll stay silent forever? Not forever, Sung-ho said. Someday, humanity will be ready to reach out again. When we're sure we can do it without becoming monsters. When we can help without dominating. When we can be strong without being feared. That day may never come, Mothcar said. Maybe not. But we have to try. Because the alternative is becoming what we fought against. And that would mean the Krath won after all, just in a different way. Mothcar stood slowly, his body protesting. Thank you for seeing me. For explaining. For being honest even when honesty is painful. Safe journey home. Chancellor, Tae-seung said. And to you, when you're ready to make it. Mothcar returned to the council homeworld and died 3 weeks later. His final report was sealed, to be opened only by future chancellors. In it, he detailed everything he had learned. The last line read, Humanity's silence is not our punishment. It is their mercy. They protect us from what they became when we forced them to stand alone. We should be grateful. And we should learn. On Earth, in a small apartment on Europa, a young human woman named So Young watched the stars through her window.